My name is Raghav and today I'll tell you about Flutter. Flutter is an open source and free framework made by Google in 2017. What happened before that was, let's say that you're a company who wants to build an application. Now, there are two major operating systems present on this world. First one, Android, and second is iOS for mobile devices. The problem lies in the fact that both of these operating systems have different languages in which the applications are made. Android supports Kotlin and Java, whereas iOS supports Swift. Let's say that you have a budget of $150,000. Now, in order to make your app accessible to both kind of people, you have to hire one, an Android team, and second, an iOS team. The both team need to be paid separately, would work separately, and you would have two separate applications for your same product. The problem lies in the fact that first of all, there would be a delay in a unified launch. Second, in case there is some upgradation or some modification in the application, then a delay and additional resources would be required. Flutter solves this program by giving you a unified code base for all your platforms, which means you can make iOS app, Android app, Linux app, Mac OS app, Windows app, and web app using a single code base. Let's take a look at three case studies. The first one, Google Pay. Second one, Dream11. And third, eBay. What happened was, Google Pay was earlier built using Kotlin. The team decided to have a UI upliftment, and due to the same fact, they migrated their whole application from Kotlin, which was a native platform, to Flutter. This helped them reduce up to 70% of the engineering efforts. Second, eBay. eBay recently decided to uplift its UI and make the app more modern looking. For this, they transferred or migrated their app from native platforms to Flutter. When a survey was conducted, 100% of the developers in the company decided that Flutter as a hybrid development strategy was better than the native development on Kotlin and Swift. Third, Dream11. Dream11 is an Indian fantasy startup, a gaming startup, and when the app was being built, they had a team of only 3 developers. All the 3 developers decided to use Flutter instead of native code base, and the app was made exponentially fast. These are some of other companies which are using Flutter: Google, Groupon, Alibaba Group, Capital One, Square, Tencent, Sonos, Nubank, BMW, even Toyota and Demand. Let's take a look at industry trends on different frameworks and the app development strategies and frameworks they use. In the early 2018, Flutter had almost zero community support and almost negligible developers using it, whereas other frameworks like React, Xamarin, and Angular were already trending in the industry. But as we progressed towards the mid-2018s, we saw a huge upliftment in Flutter trends. As you can see, a linear inclination in the graph. And around late 2018s, the Flutter community and the numbers of Flutter developers surpassed all of these frameworks, especially React. Since React was made by Facebook and is still a popular choice and one of the biggest competitor of Flutter in hybrid app space, but the surpass happened just after 1 or 2 years of its release. Now let's discuss the problems with native app development. The first two are discussed previously, that more developers are required for the same app. Second, more maintenance is required after the deployment. But the third part, where the Flutter actually shines above all other frameworks and even native development, is the easy integration of Flutter with native apps and vice versa. Let's see how it's done. Imagine you have an app of 5 screens. The fifth screen requires extensively and can be only made using the native code. Flutter gives you a choice to make 4 screens in Flutter and then make the fifth screen in either Kotlin or in Swift, and then integrate that code with your Flutter code as well. So now, for the same app, instead of making 5 screens, you have to make 6 screens, but the last 2 screens would be platform specific only. Similarly, if you have a Kotlin app or a Java app or a Swift app, you can easily integrate a Flutter code in them and make 1 or 2 screens in Flutter in order to leverage its UI power. This is this is a general workflow of a small Flutter app. At the top, you can see a function known as my app, which initializes the whole app. It's a starting point. Then you have a material UI, which defines the whole UI structure, those components like buttons, text, area, colors, and more. Then you have something known as a home page, which defines the whole home of an application. Then you have scaffolds. Scaffold is nothing but the whole screen of a device is known as scaffold. Then in scaffold you have various areas like app bars, body or center, and some buttons you may also have bottom navigation bar and more. And then each of the component has something, some other widgets in there. This is one of the Flutter app which I made. You can see from top to bottom this whole is a scaffold. Scaffold contains a column. A column has a text, 2 text fields, 1 text, 1 button mode, and 1 text mode. This whole thing is a hierarchy which is encapsulated in the column itself. The column is centered from the body of the app. So this whole body, the center is taken, and the container is the column is placed in such a format that there is no difference between this and this space. In Flutter, everything is a widget. What is a widget? In traditional development like web and all, if you type a simple text and render it in an HTML, it would render as a text. But in Flutter, everything needs to be a widget. For example, let's say we have to make a column which has a text hello world and a button which says click. We just can't type hello world and it would spit out the same. No. You have to encapsulate it in a text widget. And widgets can contain other widgets, and those can contain other widgets as well. So you can make a whole hierarchy of widgets in Flutter. That's one of the beauty of this language, as it can help you achieve object-oriented programming and helps you achieve OOPS concepts such as polymorphism and data encapsulation. Now let's take a look at the different type of widgets which Flutter offers, and a very important concept known as the state management. In Flutter, you have 2 types of widgets. First, stateful widgets, and second, stateless widgets. Stateful widgets are those which can change their data during the runtime of the application. For example, you have a screen where if you click on a button, the number on the screen increases or decreases. In such context, we can use stateful widgets since the data is being changed during the runtime of the application. But on the contrary, we have stateless widgets. Stateless widgets are those which are immutable in nature, which means during the runtime of our application, the data present in them cannot be changed. For example, a button saying register, a button saying login, or some other static data like forward passwords and more. Then we have a concept known as state management. Sometimes if we make a complex application, we may find a need that the data in our application should flow from one screen to another in a specific way, or we should have dynamic data loading from APIs, or moreover, we may also need to have routing between the screens. All such problems are easily tackled by state management. In Flutter, we have various state management packages like VelocityX, GetX, or Block. So this is a simple hello world application made in Flutter. At the top, we are importing the material UI. Then we are running our app from the main. Then we have used a stateless class, a stateless widget. Why? Because this text needs not to be changed during the runtime of our application. Then we started building our application. This is a default constructor provided for a stateless widget. Then we build it using the context. We return a material application which is returning a scaffold. The whole screen is scaffold. In scaffold, in the body, we centered everything, so the text and everything would be centered. And then I rendered a text known as hello world and styled it using this block. So the text style is font weight should be bold, color should be black, and size should be 20 pixels. This whole styling takes effect on this area only. So each and every widget is localized in nature, and the whole our app is compiled to look something like this. Now, since I told you earlier that everything in Flutter is a widget, let's take a deeper dive into this concept. Let's say we have a widget and it consists of two widgets, a stateless widget, a stateful widget. Generally, widgets which are contained in stateless widgets are asset image, text, network images, and more. A stateful widget may contain widgets like scrollable, animations, dynamic text, and more. Now let's take a look at a very important concept, the project hierarchy. Every Flutter application comes bundled with all these folders in a default setting. The first one is Android folder, consisting of specific Android specific code which is required. If we remove this Android part and run our application on iOS device, it would still run optimally but would crash for Android devices. Then we have a folder known as assets. The asset folder consists of all the assets in our application like images, fonts, and more. Then we have a build folder which consists of builds like production build, test builds, and various other builds like web app, Android build, Linux build, Mac build, or an iOS build. Then we have iOS specific folder which consists of iOS specific files. Then we have a library. The library consists of the whole Dart code which defines our Flutter application. Then we have web code where you can add web specific files. Then you have a Windows folder for Windows specific files. Then you have something known as a pubset.yaml file. Pubset.yaml files is used to add assets in our application and to add plugins in our Flutter application. Plugins. What are plugins? Plugins are the pre-existing code made by community and are open source in nature. Plugins help developers to leverage their application and to help them avoid reinventing the wheel. Let's say you want to make an application which can play a sound. Now you may have two ways to do this. First of all, make a whole new sound engine implemented in your application and play sounds. Or second, go to pub.dev, write sound, and you will find hundreds of widgets which can play sound in a single click. Another reason for using plugins may be database integrations like Firebase, or integrating some additional functionality like text, font size, icons, and more. Flutter has a great community support and has been always preferred by developers all over the globe as well as companies. The recent trends shows that there is an 80 to 90% increase in Flutter developers since its launch every year and is growing exponentially. Providing me with your time, I hope you learned something about Flutter from this seminar, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.